All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo Rice, and my correspondent,
Simone, Cherie.
And Kyle Andrew.
All right, so, this week, this is one of those very rare weeks that I found myself actually looking up stuff, which I hadn't done in a minute, because I didn't feel like we really had to. But with all this going on, I was like, okay, I need to really get into what's going on. So, Simone, I'll let you start with the rundown. So what do we have on the rundown?
So we're going to go back and cover HB 838. It's essentially being called a police protection law. It was passed in Georgia. This is, again, right after the Ahmaud Arbery hate crimes bill. I think we should dive into that a little bit deeper. Then President Trump is invoking his emergency economic powers to ban TikTok, essentially to pass really broad sanctions against TikTok and WeChat. They're Chinese-owned companies. We talked a while ago about the tension between China and the United States, and it's only growing. So I think we should cover that a little bit for sure. And then we'll get into COVID, of course, give like a little COVID update, nationally what's going on, Georgia-wise what's going on, and then we'll have a story from Kyle about what that looks like for schools and whether or not, I'm really interested, period, as to how it's gonna look when kids start going back to school. So it's a lot to cover, but we can get it done.
All right, so let's start with, actually, I also have a little look on where we stand with the stimulus package that,
Okay.
many Americans are waiting on as well. So let's start with COVID stuff. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way.
Okay, so we're still in the middle of a global pandemic that has not changed. Essentially today, I think the numbers were 6.9 million Americans that have been recently diagnosed with COVID-19. In Georgia, that is 205,000 cases. That number has gone up. There are a couple of reports. One came out from NPR this morning that does appear that Georgia is beginning to flatten the curve. We were kind of in a red zone or a hot zone, I think, only 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's a possibility that is coming down a little bit, but testing is also down. Nationally, across the board, testing is down, they said, about 75% this week from last week. I don't know what happened this week. I don't know if there was a surge last week, but testing is also down. So analysts are saying that it's kind of hard to trust these numbers with regard to infection rates when testing is down. But there have still been many COVID-related deaths. One in particular, Herman Cain, who was a presidential candidate in 2012. Good patriot, good Georgian. He passed of COVID-19. So it's definitely still as deadly as it's always been. And they're beginning to start to roll out that vaccine, which we'll hear a little bit more about. But that's currently the status of COVID. President Trump made headlines this week. Well, I'm saying he made headlines this week, like that's not every week. Anyway, he made a very interesting comment in the past couple of days. I don't know if you follow his Twitter, but there's been lots of really cool memes about him announcing, out of President Trump announcing that children almost never or almost definitely are immune from COVID-19. That's what he said, which we know is not true. And as of Monday, there were 245,000 cases of COVID-19 among kids alone. So. More interesting alternative facts.
He sat with this report. I didn't really get into it. I saw that in some of the interviews, but I'm to a point where I can't watch his interviews because it's like scratching nails on a chalkboard. And he had like all these papers, and he's swapping these papers between the reporter, and he's like, well, we've proven blah blah blah. The reporter's asking very simple questions like, well, how about this? Well, if you look at the papers, and he's shuffling all these papers in his hand, I'm like, okay, now we've hit a new low, because everybody knows that's the oldest trick in the book. When you don't know anything, you bring papers and you shuffle papers. So when somebody asks you questions like, oh, well, let me look at this, and if you look at this one, and he's swapping the same 5 papers, and I'm looking at him like, so we really doing this. We've gotten to this point where your writers have pretty much quit writing for you because you don't read anything they tell you. And now you're just kind of winging it with the oldest trick in the book, shuffling the same 5 papers, trying to make yourself look good when it just makes you look even more stupid. Like, and again, my fear with this is we do a lot of talking. And I'll say those of us that vote Democrat or believe Democrat or so on and so forth. We do a lot of talking, but we don't like to vote. Trump people don't do a lot of talking. They wait until November and they go in drones because they understand the power of voting. That's my fear. His people have gotten kind of quiet. So I feel like they're strategizing. They know what the game plan is. They know what they're up against. And I feel like when it's in November, when it's time to vote, they're going to show up in drones. And my prayer is that the same momentum we've had with all these protests that apparently are still going on, that translates into us actually going out and voting? Because if not, we're going to be in worse situation than we in now for another 4 years. And it's a scary thought, and it's a scary world. It's a scary thought.
It is. It is.
Scary.
It was. I kind of sensed the same thing. So I'm glad you said that. It kind of felt like this additional layer of like desperation that I'm not even like, you know. First of all, to make the comment that he made about children was one thing, which we all kind of know that is clearly not the case. I think it's one thing for the White House not to take certain things seriously or to be seen without masks or whatever. It's another thing for him to just kind of blatantly make these sort of comments. This kind of, it felt to me like, are you kidding me right now? Like, you're just really trying to stay in the media. You're really trying to stay ahead of it. We remember, if you don't remember, in 2016, I think there was an estimated $1 billion worth of free media that now President Donald Trump received as he was running for president. So I think a lot of this, I think we have to remember the man is running for re-election. And a lot of this is just staying on top of the headlines to be the leader of the free world and say something as outrageous as, kids are immune to corona. When so many thousands of children have died from coronavirus, it just feels kind of like he's grabbing, and we have to kind of remember that.
For me, it's not really so much what Trump says doesn't really surprise me anymore. It's actually kind of entertaining at this point. But for me, it's the amount of people that believe him and everything that he says. Like when he advised people to drink bleach because that would, help them prevent catching
Clean you
corona.
all the way out.
And some people did it, and they didn't have the outcomes that they were intending. You know what I mean? Because they drank bleach. So I mean, at this point, I'm just like hoping that everybody who was participating in all of the protests nationwide actually goes to the polls in November, because that's what really matters.
It definitely does. And right now during the runoffs, because today's the last day for early voting and the runoffs are Tuesday. So if you're not going to go out and vote today, I'm voting on the 11th. I just want to vote on actual voting day for tracking purposes. But today's the last day to early vote for these runoffs, and there's a lot of runoff offices. So don't forget about these offices, and then obviously don't forget to vote in November. But absentee ballots, that's an ongoing court battle too. I know we don't have time to get into that, but the White House is very clear that they do not want a federal mandate that there's going to be mail ballots, and a lot of activists are obviously, I think, honestly upset about that, because the president mails in his vote. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people mail in their ballots all the time. Yeah, see, it's just an effective strategy.
So I read a article on, and it got me to thinking about restoring rights to people who've been to prison. So in Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds signed an executive order on Wednesday restoring the right to vote to many state residents with felony convictions. This will render almost 40,000 Iowans eligible to vote ahead of the election. Is that where a lot of our power lies? Is that a fight we should be fighting, to restore voting rights to felons in a lot of these states? Because that is a lot of votes that could potentially be swayed to help us win this battle with Trump. Is that a fight we should actually be looking into at this point?
The numbers
Can it
are
be
there.
done like this?
Yeah, the numbers are there, so it absolutely would change it. Florida was one of the biggest examples, because it was, I think, 1 out of every 3 Black men could not vote. And it's not just Black and brown people. I mean, as a country, 1 out of, I think, 12 adult Americans has a criminal record. 1 out of every 15 Americans has a felony record, so cannot vote in many states. Some states ban that for a lifetime. So it would definitely flip the numbers. But it's not an easy battle to fight. There was a lot done to prevent people with criminal records to not vote. We have to remember, in the beginning of America's history, voting was not something everyone could do anyway. It was for white, Protestant landowners. It was not global. It was not universal. And it's required amendment by amendment by amendment, women's suffrage, et cetera, until the 19th Amendment, before everyone in theory could vote anyway once they turned 18. So, but a lot of these protections that you're talking about with regard to felonies were instituted in the Jim Crow South, and in the Jim Crow South only. Plenty of states have never had that sort of a ban, especially in the western part of the country. Others do have a ban against people voting while they're in jail. There's 2 states that are an exception to that. Outside of that, it's just a question of whether or not you're done with your time. If you're done with your time, they say, hey, come and be a citizen again. Rejoin society. You get your rights back. But in the Jim Crow South, that's just not the case. There's even in Mississippi and Alabama in particular, There were crimes that they believed Black men were more prone to committing than white men. For example, murder at one point would not have cost a white man his vote, or a man his vote, because they believed that, at least they believed most white men were accused of murder with regard to domestic violence. But domestic violence, wife hitting, wife beating, wife assault, which they believed that Black and brown men were more likely to commit, was a felony. So there was a point in Mississippi and Alabama's history where murder would not have cost you your right to vote, but lower forms of violence would have. So it's all been a very strategic purpose to prevent certain people from voting. I mean, you know about the poll tax and all of that, but it's just, once these sorts of laws are instituted, they do take a lot of work to repeal, and people always make these sort of moral, posturing arguments about, well, why should anyone have the right to vote, but someone who's never been in trouble, and so, yeah. But numbers wise, if your question, yeah, it's a game changer. I really care about the issue, obviously, period, morally, but yes, but politically, yeah, it would change some things.
Well, I mean, I looked at it, and when I read the article, I was like, maybe this is where maybe these are the secret keys to us actually swaying people over. Like, it's at this point, anything we can do, because like I said, my fear is the Trumpians, is what I'm gonna call them, the Trumpians, are just kind of sitting back, biding time until November. And we continue to do these protests and stuff, and we'll look at the HB 838, and we get pieces of legislation passed, but then, they know the game. So they come back on the back end and pass something that kind of underlies it, but you don't know it unless you're actually in it. And I'm like, this is the part that I keep fighting with people about. It's not about what we enforce, it's about what's written. What is actual law? What can they legally do that we either are not conscious of or we don't feel vested enough to find out more about it? And I'm just, again, it's a battle we keep fighting one-sided. It's great to protest. That's beautiful. I love it. But what are we doing on the back end? Who's negotiating? Who's talking? Who's looking over bills? Who's in the oversight place that's looking at what they pass and stuff that comes along with it? Like, it's a two-sided battle, and I feel like we're only fighting on one cylinder, which is dangerous when you have somebody like Trump in office. Like, it's got to be a full-out war, and I think we still having battles.
So do you want to get into 838? Since you brought that. Okay, since you brought that up. Okay. So, I mean, we did cover this a little bit with a couple of our guests, and it's been called the Police Protection Law. Governor Kemp did sign it. I know if you have more background on it, I mean, you're welcome to do it. Essentially, it's providing an extra layer of protection for law enforcement. Is passed around the same time that a lot of advocates were coming out and wanting the Georgia hate crimes law to pass. House Chairman Chuck Epstein, who's a really good Republican on justice reform and these sorts of issues, had been sponsoring the hate crimes bill for forever. I mean, it had been essentially on the docket, quote unquote, for forever, and just didn't have any momentum behind it. And there were a lot of folks who were like, oh, why do we need to call it a hate crime? A crime is a crime. I don't understand. They felt it was unnecessary. And then obviously, not just because of what happened in the wake of George Floyd, but Breonna Taylor and certainly Ahmaud Arbery, all of those actions all of a sudden gave the hate crimes bill another look, and then it passed. But at the same time, they passed this bill, which was, not in committee or in its way through the legislature at all, but did get passed at the last minute. And just for everyone's reference, it's not different in Georgia than it is in a lot of states, but especially in Georgia, it is the expectation that last minute bullshit will go through the chambers. It happens all the time. There's bills that are just introduced and that nobody pays any attention to, and they don't really get voted very favorably, and they just kind of hang out for the 40 days of the session. And all of a sudden on day 39, you'll find that, it passed from one of the chambers. It happens all the time. Or people will use the same language for a bill that was dead. Like, they'll grab a paragraph from here, have a couple of conversations. In this case, for the police protections, while you're passing that hate crimes law, why not just a little paragraph that makes sure that police, it happens all the time. The challenge this year that was so different is that it was COVID, right? And so physically, people could not just go to the Capitol. There was very, very limited physical presence allowed. And even some of the members of the voting body were remote, were virtual, because they were not willing to take that risk. There was a big COVID infection with our state representatives, if you remember correctly. It affected my congresswoman, actually. So it was a different setting. And because of that, a lot of the lobbyists could not even figure out what was being voted on at certain points in time. Like it was a situation where very quickly Georgia had to figure out, okay, how can we make everything we do available to the public, because we're used to just opening the doors, and now we have to actually make sure that everything is streamed, that there's no cutouts, that the volume is good. People have to be able to participate, so we have to actually like answer our emails and take like it really opened up the process a lot, but it did not change this last minute stuff that happened. So this was able to pass because nobody expected it. Those conversations were had amongst private people who wanted to have them. And there are a lot of advocates who are very, very upset about it. They were upset about it the second it was passed. They did not want the governor to sign it because law enforcement officers already have protections. They have protections under the Constitution. They have protections under Georgia's code. This is like an additional layer of protection to kind of prevent, really to prevent people from having any sort of recourse, even in very slim circumstances, against police. And remember, the death of Rayshard Brooks, who was killed by an officer as he was fleeing at the Wendy's parking lot. That happened right in the middle of all this. After a really publicized video went viral. That exact situation is why people felt like this is so untimely. The officer who killed Rayshard Brooks is now suing the mayor of Atlanta, actually, because he lost his job. So, I mean, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms now, who's already enthralled in other lawsuits, is being sued. So yeah, police and police unions do have a lot of protection. There's just people who really feel adamantly that police are a protected class, that they are in danger and that they need additional legal protection. Obviously, I sit on a different side of that issue, but.
They're not in danger. They're not in danger. We just asking them to do their job properly. I don't think it's that hard. This is really kind of frustrating. What are they in danger of?
I mean, I get it. When you're a policeman and you're called to a scene and you don't really have all the full details, and you get there, and I think I've used this term before, a huge man is beating his wife, and you have to make a split decision on whether to shoot him and kill him because he's so big and you're so small, or where to shoot him. I get it. But at the same token, with what we've physically seen and continue to see, this was not a good move. Now, the part that disturbed me, because I actually looked it up, and the part that really disturbed me was Section 5, which says a peace officer shall have the right to bring a civil suit against any person, group of persons, organization, or corporation, or the head of an organization or corporation for damages either pecuniary or otherwise suffered during the officer's performance of official duties, for abridgment of the officer's civil rights arising out of the officer's performance of official duties, or for filing a complaint against the officer which the person knew was false when it was filed.
Yeah, so restated.
My issue. Yeah, so basically what they're saying is, in a nutshell, and I'll use an example. I know examples are a lot easier for people to grasp. So what they're saying is, if there is somebody policing Black Lives Matter, and in the line of them trying to take down a protester, they get hurt. Now they have the ability in civil court to sue this individual's family, Black Lives Matter, the person in charge of Black Lives Matter, anybody's fair game in civil court, which is, where you can get pecuniary damages. You can say, well, because I took them down. Now, mind you, the victim was hurt probably more. But in my line of duty, trying to take down this alleged victim, I scraped my knee or I broke my arm. Doesn't matter what happened to the victim. The policeman who took the victim down, who may or may not have been violent, this is what can happen. Now he can sue everybody involved, including the organization's person in charge. So Black Lives Matter, the people in charge of Black Lives Matter, it is beyond ludicrous. Honestly, when you look at these kinds of bills, I look at intent. What was the intent behind this? Because all about the writing. So you wrote in organization, everything. So what are we really trying to do? What was really the intent behind this bill?
I mean, remember, it's not a two-way street either. So with regard to, people cannot sue individual officers. You can, if you have a really legitimate claim and a really strong case, then sometimes there are individual police departments as a whole that can be sued. But this is just a one-way protection. What is being called is essentially contempt of cop. What I thought you were going to bring up about this bill was the kind of free speech situation. There's language of this bill that snuck in from, I think it was House Bill 426, again, something that never moved, that it was just kind of introduced and nobody thought would be taken seriously. It was snuck in, and it's about people who voice negative things about police. So it's people who say offensive things to the officers who are arresting them, whatever the verbal, assault could be. that is something that is considered, I think, intimidation on behalf of that individual, and again becomes another grounds for a suit. So it doesn't just have to be something physical, it could just be verbal, which if the reason why this is so crazy is because you got to think about officers who make like 1,000,001 DUI stops or suspected DUI stops on a regular basis, and I'm pretty sure there is not a single officer in this country who has not been called something other than the child of God as they put cuffs on someone, if for no other reason than that nobody really wants to be cuffed, especially if they're not exactly in their right mind during the situation. So the idea that could give someone legal recourse, I mean, it just feels like, what kind of line of work is this for you if you can't be spoken to that way? I don't know if you could be a successful bartender if you can't be spoken to that way. I just don't see it happening. You know, normally there's something called assault, which could be verbal, like it's a misdemeanor. So, you know, if you say something crazy to me in a grocery store and I wanted to take it there, I could take it there. Whether or not it would stick is a whole other situation. But that's a situation in which I'm a citizen, you're a citizen, we're minding our own business, and you just verbally assault me. In this situation, we have an officer who is approaching an individual, potentially probable cause of committing a crime. It is a tense situation. Language is going to happen. It feels absolutely ridiculous to me. It's just like, again, it's like contempt of cop. It's a bill.
No, it is ridiculous. And again, it's when this kind of stuff is done, it's about the intent. Right. And you know, I wish every day Kemp does something stupider. I wish that we had fought harder to really hold him accountable for that stolen election between him and Stacey. Because I don't feel like we'd be dealing with this crap if we had gotten Stacey in versus just kind of letting it ride, and now we're stuck with Kemp. Because I feel like every time the people in Georgia say, this is ridiculous, this is crazy, he does the absolute opposite. So we're fighting with you about unraveling. We're not saying completely get rid of immunity, because policemen, I do feel like need some level of immunity. But when we're saying unravel, why it's like they're being wrapped in immunity bubble wrap. So what we're saying to you essentially is, let's really unpack this and really get down to what they actually need to ensure that they can do their job well and be protected, versus what we've given them that they don't necessarily need, which is blocking us from actually forcing them to do their jobs well and to gain a better understanding of how to not kill folks that may be people of color. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I don't believe anyone, you know how I feel about immunity, period. Like, I just don't, we have a legal system, a criminal and a civil legal system, because people are not perfect and people are going to do either bad things or irresponsible things or make mistakes. But those mistakes can cost other people a lot. So the whole point is that we have a court system where, you know, I can't prevent everything from happening to me, but if something bad happens, I can go to court and I can try to get justice in court. The idea of immunity is just so counter-constitution. I can't even really wrap my mind around that idea. Like, there's already qualified immunity for officers. There's total absolute immunity for prosecutors. There's immunity for medical professionals. And I don't understand. Well, no, yes, I do, because these people have huge unions and huge lobbies, and they spend a lot of money for these protections, a lot of money. And a lot of time. And again, there's that moral posturing of we're service, you know, we're public servants, and we have hard jobs, and they do have very hard jobs. And you know, I wouldn't want a government job for myself. So regardless of what it was, how dangerous it was, but a public servant has to serve the public, which means that the public should still be superior at the end of the day. Like there shouldn't be this ability for the government to have so much power that there's virtually anything they can do to you, whether it's a false arrest, whether it's intentionally malicious, whether it's accidental. You don't want a situation in which any state actor has so much power that they don't even have to dot their I's and cross their T's. If you want accountability, if you want great performance, you do have to have some level of accountability. I mean, that's whether you're a company, whether you're a parent, you know, you can't just make it impossible to punish someone. You know, I don't see how that makes us a greater country. That's just the last thing I'll say about that.
I got nothing. Let me ask this though, and I did not warn us that we were going to go this way, but I'm going to see how much you probably know about this. When we talk about this campaign, defunding the cops, what does that really mean? Because I think everybody's kind of confused. I have the overall overview. What exactly does that mean?
Have you seen, and Trump's campaign ads right now are definitely scare tactic ads, try to make people really fear the police. Look that up, folks, if you haven't seen it, that ad that Trump has put out where somebody's calling for the police in an emergency and they say, we'll get back to you in 5 days. Anyway, so defunding the police is about, for one thing, it's an initiative that can only be enacted on the departmental level. What people want to do is to see more resources diverted away from police response in certain situations. And most of those situations involve things like routine traffic stops. They involve things like mental health alarms or alerts. Police officers get calls all the time about someone talking to themselves in the middle of the street, or somebody walking naked in the middle of the highway. Oftentimes people are having mental or psychiatric issues, and those situations don't really require a person to be, first of all, to go to jail. But sometimes a police officer is not the best intermediary in those situations. A lot of times they are, because they handle them all the time, but things can go wrong. So it's those sorts of situations where people are saying, instead of having police do everything from, oh, you have a broken taillight, or you switched lanes incorrectly, or, you know, you're an armed suspect, or, you know, someone is in physical danger. Instead of having police do everything, right? When we know that police do have to respond to situations as though they're emergencies, and when we know police are armed, when we know police have to take very serious action and treat every situation seriously, maybe we should not use police so much for non-serious situations. There's an initiative in Atlanta right now called the Pre-Arrest Diversion Initiative, and it was created by Moki Macias, who's a really awesome woman, for that exact reason. When people are having mental health issues, when it's clear that they've got addiction troubles, or that they're homeless, maybe they're loitering, maybe they're just having a really bad day, instead of having them arrested, let's just intervene. So they literally step in the gap, and they are mostly social workers. They are, and they're counselors, crisis counselors, and some of them are just are advocates, some are attorneys, to step in the gap and help that person, get them to a resource rather than putting them in the back of a cop car because they're just, you know, having a mental breakdown or something like that. So it's about defunding police to do certain things. Police don't need the same budget size if they don't have to respond to the same things. There are other situations in which it's about traffic stops. So instead of police having to pull everybody over who may have an expired tag or an expired plate, using technology and allowing technology to do that monitoring, as you know, you drive past these streets and your plates get scanned and you get a little letter in the mail that says, hey, you know, here's a $200 bill. That is, it's not fun, but that's a situation in which you don't have to interact with an officer, you know, and the less opportunities for people to have to interact with officers, then the less chances there are that they can have negative interactions or dangerous interactions. So it's about saying, let's not use police for everything. Let's just use police for dangerous things, scary things, situations where we may really need police there.
Kyle, what you think?
I'm trying to follow. So essentially, a police won't be able to pull you over for a bad tail light or things of that sort.
Yeah, they're basically saying let's not use police if we don't have to. So let's use cameras, street cameras, or sometimes you'll see those little like surprise cameras when you're going through an intersection, and you know, it's tracking your speed.
Flash.
Yeah,
like
they're saying that sort of thing.
I like that. I've never been pulled over for a broken tail light. Like right now I have a fog light out, and my dad is just like telling me to get it fixed before I get pulled over. But like, I don't need a police officer to pull me. I mean, yeah, I'm going to, but it's just like, it's just the idea. I mean, I'm just envisioning myself being pulled over for having a broken fog light. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, isn't there a murder that you have to be investigating or something? You know,
that's the kind of attitude that can get you hurt. I'm serious.
Exactly. You're probably going to vocalize that. You're probably going to say that.
No, I wouldn't say that. Especially right now. I mean, I know how to conduct myself in that case, but like, it would definitely be going on in my mind. It may exude through my body language. I can't help that. But
yeah. So you see, but you see, right. So the opposition to this is very much so like, oh, defund the police, like no police, like good luck calling that social worker when your house is being broken into, like all that like ridiculous language. We do not need a police-less society, and that's not what like 99% of people are promoting. There are certain people who are talking about abolishing police. Those are the same people who are breaking into the Louis Vuitton stores, and we're not focused on their message, okay? So what we're talking about is just situations in which we don't need officers to respond. Our officers undergo a lot of training, and they're public servants. They're on the public dime. We don't need them to do things that we have technology to do. And so to the extent that we can avoid it, I just think we should absolutely avoid it. I've definitely been pulled over for things like that, for things like, you know, the taillight situation you're talking about, or whatever. To the extent that that technology can do that job, I think we should let technology do that job. Or a social worker.
That's that.
I agree.
I just want to clear that up because, like I said, we've watched him do it, and he continuously does it. President Trump will present alternate facts about stuff, especially stuff that is not going to benefit him. So when you think about defunding the cops, I think everybody's like, oh my God, especially when you see that commercial, you're just like, oh my God, is that what this means? That is not what that means. It means something completely different. But, you know, I mean, I hate to say this, but I got to say this. You have to admire how I hate to say smart, but you have to admire how crafty he is. It's like he had this plan from Jump Street to present a such thing called alternate facts, and it catches on to the capacity that now you don't even know what's factual and what's not factual, and the average Joe does not care because the slogan of alternate facts is so cute that you just kind of go with whatever. Like, the man is so crafty, like, to create that, to spin off to the point where people can't decipher what's good and what's not. It's disgusting. But, I mean, the man, on some level, he has some level of intellect, even if it's an evil genius. He has some level of intellect to know how to spin these things and set the stage that they work in his favor. But I digress. All right.
Yeah, I can't aim you on that. I can't aim you. It was worth saying, but I can't aim in that at all.
I didn't expect you to. I mean, I hate to say it, but when you really look at it, you're just like, bro, like, how are you able to pull these things off? And
Ricardo,
then to
can
have
I just make a comment really briefly? Over this last week, I saw somebody post something on Twitter, some young woman who said, no offense, comma, but something, you know, but it was KNOW of FENCE, no of offense. Like, yeah, and she meant like no offense, but she wrote no of offense, and it struck me that, okay, this person has, you know, and it's not a judgment on that person, it's more a broader statement of the idea that this person has done more speaking probably just than reading, and so has never seen, you know, no offense written as it's meant to, and just heard it and figured it meant no of fence, like a fence outside. And so it discourages me that people read so little or engage in different low levels of research. And so when there's like big slogans and ads that just scare people or that just excite people, it feeds into that same idea of like, let me not think critically, let me not double check, let me not, you know, let me not dig, let me just say, oh, defund the police, that must mean, you know, the purge. These people want the purge. I don't want the purge. And I'm against that. You know, that kind of ABC logic, not even ABC, like AB, like that two-step logic is just, that should be discouraged. It hurts my heart. And so I think it goes, that's a good segue to Kyle's story about school. But basically these kids need to be in school or we're in trouble. They need to be in school.
For sure. So if you, in Georgia, school started back in Paulding County. Specifically the story that the school that we're gonna be talking about right now with this story is North Paulding County. So there was a picture that went viral all over social media, and TMZ even did an article about it and posted it to their Twitter. There's a picture of students in the hallway. I'm looking at it now. I see maybe 4 masks in this picture, but of course, you know how narrow a high school hall is, and it's just full of students. And so picture, so the school has now suspended 2 students that posted the picture, and they continue to threaten the remaining students, saying if you post anything while you're on school campus, school grounds, then you will have to suffer the consequences. And the mother of one of the students that were suspended, she's 15, her name is Hannah, she's actually challenging the suspension. She says that cell phone use is allowed in between classes, and the sophomore waited until the regular hours to post to her social media. I feel like if you're gonna open your schools and allow students to be in a hallway with this many people and not require a mask, I feel like you're subject to judgment, you know, on a worldwide scale. So I don't understand what the issue is. I'm interested to see what you guys think about.
How are these like schools even handling kids having access to this technology? Because I feel like this is something they're gonna have a hard time controlling when all kids have cell phones. And they all record stuff anyway. Like if you go, I mean, you can't watch the news for 5 minutes without saying something that a kid posted, you know, whether it's like fights or whatever, vlogs. I mean, kids just vlogging from class. So I don't understand why schools can just issue a punishment in this one particular case. Like it's if all the kids are wearing masks and there's nothing to spread, right? So I just don't understand have that punishment.
They're like that is the real issue. The real issue has nothing to do with them posting the picture. The real issue is the school got caught with their pants down. The fact that you say that we're going to let kids come back to school, but we're going to protect them when these photos and these videos show otherwise, that is the real problem here. They're just using, again, it's about what's written and the power that authorities have. They're just using some loophole, I'm sure, in their code to suspend these kids, because the reality is you're not doing what you said you were going to do, which is protecting these kids. And mind you, this is not an elementary school. This is not a kindergarten school. Which Trump has already said, oh, well, kids are immune and they don't have to worry about it. Okay, well, whatever. We'll bypass that. This is a high school with young adults who are probably just as prone as we are to catch this disease. So what are you really doing? And at the end of the day, that is the core of this issue. The fact that this school got caught with its pants down, not protecting these kids, not enforcing masks, not enforcing social distancing. This is an attempt to discourage anybody else from showing them with their pants down. And when I say them, I mean the administration not protecting these kids. That's all this boils down to. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like the narrative that the coronavirus only affects older people over 50 and 60 and things of that sort, I think that's what's keep continuing to being pushed. I have friends my age that are currently positive and have been positive. And so if people my age can get it, I'm pretty sure 14 to 18-year-olds can get it. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
And the principal, he also said, that all hallways, specific hallways, are supposed to be one way. Like traffic was only supposed to be going one way down the hallway. This picture shows
they were all over.
Yeah. Like, so I don't really understand. Yeah.
Both ways. Like it's utter garbage. But that's where we sit at now. Again, everything that the citizens of Georgia say they don't want, I swear Kemp does the opposite. So most of the people, and this is a two-sided argument, because there's also a side of this argument that we are not talking about, and I'm talking about specifically to communities, downtrodden communities, which unfortunately a lot of times is communities of color. Yes, kids probably do not need to be out of school, because we already have that issue. We already have that vast issue of kids with this learning curve and so on and so forth. So I am not in favor of kids not being in school, because it affects so many other things. The issue is if these kids, and again, I'll make this specific to kids of color, if these kids end up with the COVID virus, the likelihood of their parents having insurance on them is probably not as high as other races, number one. Number two, if they get sick and they're staying home, who's going to stay with them? Like, parents are already struggling trying to keep the kids. They really do want them to go back to school. They kind of need them to go back to school. But if your child gets COVID, like, not only are you going to have to be home with them, now you got to add all these other extra things you're going to need. You're going to need a bunch of masks. You're going to need a bunch of hand sanitizers. You're going to have to social distance these kids at home. There's a whole other issue that you're going to have to deal with on top of them just not going to school, because it's just not a viable option. Now, on the back end of that, if we say that kids are only going to do online learning, okay. When Triana was on here, I'm almost inclined to think that Paulding is in Triana's district. Did she say that? I think she said that Paulding is in her district. I want to say, don't quote me on it, but I think she did say that. Paulding is in some of that in her district. When she was here, part of her issue was the level of access to internet for a lot of those kids in that district. So if we're going to say, and this is the part of the fight we're not talking about, if we're saying that these kids are going to be home and they are absolutely almost 100% going to need internet access to do this work, on top of a curve that is not favorable to minority kids anyway, how are we going to solve that problem? Now I'm home, which creates a problem for my family too, because now mama can't go to work, daddy can't go to work at the same time, because somebody's got to stay home with the kids. I mean, unless your kids are old enough, you leave them home, which is a whole other stuff, a whole other conversation. But now, one of the parents can't work. Heaven forbid, it's a single parent. So now she got to figure out how she's going to find somebody to watch this child. And while she goes to work, and whoever watches this child has to make sure that this child does the online homework that they're supposed to do. That's problem number one. Problem number two may be, how is little Ty Kim going to be able to do this online assignment when we don't have access to internet in the house? I saw a story with one child who was saying that he had to drive to the local Chick-fil-A to sit in the parking lot to use their internet to be able to do his homework. Well, if your mom is already struggling with trying to find somebody to keep you, how are you going to drive yourself to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's to use their Wi-Fi? And this is a 20-minute assignment. This is probably a 3 to 4 hour assignment that may take you a couple of days to get done. Or do you really have the resources? Because you don't even have internet access. Do you really have the resources to find a local eatery to use their internet?
It's just not an option.
Like,
it's not practical. We're not set up for this.
Exactly. But this is the other side of this. And like I said, I talk about African minority communities. That is us. This is the side of the stuff we got to start thinking about. When we say, well, yeah, we want to send the kids back, but no, I don't want to, because I hear people say it all the time. I don't want to send my kid back to school because it's not safe. Okay, that's cute, Keisha. But you already struggling now with trying to take care of the 2 kids you got at home. So I'm saying, like, we got to start thinking about these things on the other side, because what's good for the goose may not be necessarily good for the gander. When we say we don't want to send our kids back to school, that's great. But do you have internet access at your house where your child can effectively do their homework and assignments and not get farther behind than they may or may not be at the moment? Number 2, can you take care of them and go to work and stuff, and they're good? These are the kind of questions we got to start asking, because we're not on equal grounding when we talk about homeschooling. We're just not. And until we start having two-sided conversations on a perspective that is catered just to us, we do our community and our kids a disservice. Now, again, I'm not saying the kids don't need to be in school. God knows they do. But the repercussions of minority kids catching COVID and taking it home is just too much to not consider the whole picture. That's all I'm saying.
100%.
We got to look
100%.
at it.
There's another story I think we should segue to before we run out of time, right? So I know, Ricardo, you're probably voting for Kanye West. Here's what happens. When people run for president, it's not as simple as it seems. There's a big process that involved in trying to get on the ballot in all 50 states and our territories. It's not an easy thing to do. As a libertarian fan, I can definitely attest to that. You need a lot of signatures to get a candidate on the ballot in a state that is not being presented by one of the major 2 parties. That's why the 2-party system is so difficult. So Kanye West has done this anyway because he's Kanye West and he's going to do it anyway. So he's been running his campaign. He had his first event in the Carolinas, actually about 2 Sundays ago now, I think, where he announced one of his first policy positions, which is that everyone with a baby should get $1 million. He was in Charleston, South Carolina. That's right. Everyone was very excited about that. Kanye has been, in the middle of headlines for a lot of reasons. Situations going on between him and his wife, and accusations about his mental health and where he is with his treatment. There's been just a lot of tweets from him, to be fair, not all speculation, but that's caused just a lot of conversation around, what this campaign can all mean. Now, he's had a team that has been, trying to do its due diligence to get on the ballot in all these different states. What has been interesting about this development, about this campaign, is that Kanye has basically hinted, for some headlines are saying he's admitted it, that he is running as a spoiler against Joe Biden. We know that, again, Joe Biden's running against President Trump. As of today, the landscape looks really good for Joe Biden. Look at the NPR graph when you get a chance. It's got Georgia as a toss-up, Texas as a toss-up, I think Ohio, but all the other states are looking pretty blue in terms of the battleground states. So anyway, in an interview with Kanye West, this was a text interview that happened just yesterday, Kanye West says that he was walking for president, not running. Someone asked him if he had any ulterior motives, because we know that he had a good relationship with Donald Trump or has, and Donald Trump has, been asked about Kanye's campaign and said that I like him very much. And people are kind of wondering, are you running as a spoiler? Are you trying to split the Democratic vote? Trying to split, the vote that Trump may not get by running for office? There's already 225 electoral college votes that he won't get because he's just missed all the deadlines in these states. So he won't be on the ballot in a lot of the states where it matters. So people are kind of asking, like, why are you doing this? Like we get, a lot of people care about what's going on in the country, but you can't win. Why are you doing this? And people started to say, are you trying to split the vote? So when he was asked that question by a reporter, he said, quote, "I'm not going to argue with you. Jesus is king." He left it at that. That said, his attorney was captured on video by The Hill walking into the Wisconsin office to drop off the signatures 5 minutes late. This same attorney works for President Trump. So this is a woman, her name was Lane Ruland. She was captured on video trying to drop off signatures for Kanye West's presidential campaign to get him on the ballot. She's literally his attorney, like as of right now, not formally, currently. And this just happened this week. So there's video of her going into the office. She's 20 seconds after 5 p.m. with the number of signatures that she needed to get Kanye on the ballot. His campaign, Trump's campaign has denied it. Like, no, we're not working with Kanye West. We're not working with Kanye West. Well, technically speaking, maybe his campaign is not, but this is an attorney of Trump's dropping off these signatures for Kanye West. So basically proving, or very strongly suggesting, that Kanye is running as a spoiler and not even as like a legitimate candidate, trying to split the vote away from Joe Biden. So in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, there were some Black officials who held a press conference and said, like, listen, we know what a GOP ploy is. We know that you're Trump's homeboy, that you're doing this on his behalf, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. But you know what happens when these votes get split and when there's a lot of competition, like things get very ugly. I remember you being pretty upset about the Abrams Kemp situation when there was a third party candidate, and you said there was like 2% or 1% that went to him, but that 1% may have really come in handy. I remember you being kind of upset. So, I mean, the vote can't.
We could have used that.
Yeah. So what do you think about this?
Kyle, what you go first? You go first. I don't even want
to. My guy Kanye. I mean, okay. Every time Kanye does something, I just want to say that my friends always come to me and it's like, okay, what you got to say for your boy? You know, I've been coming to his defense for a very long time. I kind of came to his defense when he made the slavery comment, because if you sometimes, like before where he is now, if you listen to Kanye is saying he's got good points. His delivery is just not right. But now, at his rally in North Carolina, he made comments about how him and Kim, they had conflict about whether they wanted to abort their firstborn. I'm like, okay, but now I'm more concerned for his mental health. Like, actually, I'm scared for him, and I'm not paying Kanye any attention when it comes to politics. If he releases an album, cool, I'll check it out. But
gotcha. So you were not? Would you have never voted for him under any? If he was on the ballot in Georgia, would you cast that vote?
No. Especially not where we are now. I mean, like I have friends that are like, Kyle, when you go in November, who are you gonna vote for? I'm like, come on now. You really think that lowly of me that I would really vote for Kanye West? Like, But honestly though, I am very concerned for him, and I wish him and Kim the best. I think while we're on the subject, I think his wife is handling the situation very well to the best of her ability. And there are 4 kids involved with that, and mental disorders of that sort are very, very scary. And if she has to get away, then she has my blessing, So yeah.
Now watching, I'm a Kanye fan and a Kim fan, for sure.
I wake up some mornings and I just try to understand how we got to this place in history, that the office of the President of the United States has become such a joke and such a menial job that any individual feels like they can aspire to it. In my day, it was one of those things. It wasn't that we felt as Black folks we couldn't do it. We just understood what it would take, especially once you took government, what it would take to really be the leader of the free world. And it wasn't something you feared. It was something you revered. So, you wouldn't have behind it trying to run. It was something you knew you needed to be in a specific place to get done. The fact that we've gotten to such a place that someone with the mental capacity, which is beyond questionable at this point, of Kanye West, think it's cool and popular to attempt to run for this level of office, especially in the climate with all that's going on. Knowing you have issues with bipolarism, knowing you don't have a happy home life, and your first lady will play a major role I don't even want to say if. I'm not even going to say if, because it's not even worth mentioning. In whatever alternate universe you figure this is going to happen in. Again, this is the second time I'm going to say something that I normally would never say and can't even believe I'm saying this. But I have a newfound respect for Kim Kardashian. I really do. And I never thought I would be the life to say to shut up. I never thought in life that I would be saying this. But I have to commend Kim Kardashian for some of the actions she's taken within the last 4 years. Definitely the last 3, or definitely last 2 years of us doing this show in this format. For her to come forward and say, look, his home life ain't that good. We ain't that good. And the reality is my husband may be a genius with music, but he is bipolar. And we have said this 1,000 times. And now I'm concerned for his well-being. Whole nother level of respect. To watch that video of him breaking down on his first campaign trail, I don't know how anybody could fathom the thought of having this man, y'all talking about and I'm only using what people like to say, y'all talking about the orange man in the White House now? Do you really want to put Kanye in the White House? And if that is a viable solution to anybody that is listening to the leadership blend, stop watching.
Oh.
I hate to say that, but just actually no. You need to watch us every time we come on.
All right, here's
like,
the thing.
You need to watch us every time we're on to get a deeper understanding of what is really going on in the world today, especially for those of us that look like us. Because if you earnestly believe that putting Kanye West in the White House is going to put any of us in a better situation, I ain't praying hard enough. I'm just not. I'm not praying hard enough.
Well, we always want to pray. We want to pray very hard. I know we don't have that much time, but I do want to say, here's the thing: the way policy works is kind of crazy. I mean, I did not vote for President Trump. I was very adamant about not voting for him. It was the end of a lot of my Lincoln dreams when he became the nominee. However, for example, take the First Step Act. That First Step Act allowed 100,000 people to leave federal prison. The crazy thing about policy is that it can be done right, even with someone who has absolutely no idea what they are doing at the helm. The problem with that is that it causes this level of heightened anxiety for basically four plus years, because anything this person does or tweets or says could potentially cause a problem. As a candidate, I definitely don't want to keep going in this direction. I don't want to keep going in the direction we currently are. I don't think there's anything wrong with celebrities getting involved in the process. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a well-known individual and trying to take great steps. I love that Kim Kardashian is pursuing law. I love the work that she's done with justice reform. I think it just goes to show that if you have the resources, do something good, do something positive. Who cares if you don't know what you're doing? Start at the bottom, learn, get mentors, surround yourself with the right people, like help people. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to discourage that. However, I think for a lot of the things that he's talking about, there are real policy solutions that do need to happen. He could be a great champion for those things. He doesn't have to run for office to do that. I think that's just something that a lot of people want to do, not necessarily celebrities. A lot of people just figure, I'm going to run for this or I'm going to run for that, when maybe that's not the best outlet for the change that they want to see. Maybe they're just really passionate about one thing, and maybe that's just what they should pursue. But when you're a public servant, you got to talk about everything. You got to talk about the environment. You got to talk about climate change. You got to talk about trade. You got to talk about the economy. You got to talk about violence and policing and the law. Also got to talk about education and what that should look like and why we're so behind. Like, it takes such a wide body of knowledge and passion for all of those little transportation, technology, like everything, that I really don't think it's for everyone to do. I'm definitely, like you said, Kyle, concerned more so about the way he's being, his health, but B, the way he's being treated as well. And the way that people are talking about him and the way that people are disparaging him. I never like seeing that. I never like seeing a grown man talked about in a negative way, especially a Black man, and especially a man who's already been very clear that he has a diagnosed mental illness, because his own choices around how to handle that are his own. And we can't speak to that. We don't have his condition. Even if we did, it wouldn't manifest the same way in your eyes. So we don't have a place to say what you should or should be doing. You should be on medication. You know, on E! News, they were saying like, oh, he's off his meds. And that's why, you know what, I'm kind of glad that show was canceled. That's what they get. They run their mouths too much, and they're not good people. They're not good people. A lot of these celebrity analysts, they're not good people, especially ET Canada. They could all go like, take a long walk off a short pier. But anyway, you have to pray for people, and you have to understand that like they're going through their own journey, and maybe in 10 years this will make more sense. But in the meantime, nothing but prayers and like well wishes. Definitely no negativity is going to come from me, because it's just not right.
All right, so let me, as much as Simone doesn't want to talk about, I won't talk about it. So we're going to make a segue to First Lady Michelle Obama. And I'm not saying former. First Lady Michelle Obama. said she's suffering from low-grade depression. And she was saying that the reason for that is the pandemic, race relations in the U.S., political strife, everything. And she was saying that she's waking up in the middle of the night because she's worried about something or there's a heaviness. And she said this on her new podcast, which I haven't had a chance to listen to, but she said this on her new podcast. And she was just saying, it just got her feeling really low. The only reason I want to bring this up because not even 2 weeks ago, we had the conversation about Tamar Braxton, who is apparently doing well. And her situation forced WeTV to have to say, look, if you're really this unhappy, then we'll sever ties. But I still think they're doing her show. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I think they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, they're still doing her show anyway. But they said after that, they can discuss it or they'll sever ties, whatever the case may be. But the mere fact that First Lady, I have to say former, I guess, former First Lady Michelle Obama, for her to come out and say, that she's experiencing this as well, for me, and for a lot of Americans, because like I said, when I saw the post on Facebook, like when she said it, you saw all these comments. And while I was reading it, people were just commenting, hey, First Lady, I feel the same way. I just didn't know who to talk about it with, or, I thought it was just me. I think this is something that's really going to become something. And like I told somebody, I get it. When you get up and you see, like I said, when you can't really leave your house because you got this invisible disease floating around, you go in a grocery store and you're wearing a mask like you're in a third world country. A lot of people have been furloughed or laid off, and now you're depending on unemployment, which in this space, let me say this real quick. I just want to point out to everybody, in November, I want you to remember that on July 31st, this past weekend, the Republicans, instead of staying in their space and figuring out what they were going to do with the unemployment benefits boost, which was the $600, and the eviction moratorium where it held off, saved off evictions, they decided we going home. We ain't going to deal with it this weekend. We going home. We'll deal with it on Monday. That's cute. The problem is the deadline was July 31st. So now everybody's $600 boost is done. All the eviction moratorium is done, which means evictions are about to be on the table. Those 30-day evictions are starting to go back to court. That $600 that everybody was depending on is gone. And even if they restart it, it's going to take time to get back in rotation. I want everybody to remember this when it's time to vote in November.
Yes.
They took a break, and they knew that all that stuff was going to expire on July 31st. And they're still not even close to coming to a conclusion right now on August the 7th.
Right.
So I want everybody to remember that when it's time to vote, that the Senate took a break because they care that little about, and I'll say they care that little about the American people who were in dire need of that unemployment boost and the eviction moratorium. I just want to point that out. I forgot where I was going, but I just
you were
want
talking
to
about
make
Michelle
sure
Obama's
that
depression, but that was an important note. So it was worth the deviation.
Yeah, I just want to point that out, that when it's time to vote, these are the kinds of things we need to remember when it's time to vote, because there is a direct correlation between who you put in office to represent your best interest. Yep. I know plenty of people who needed that $600.
Oh, yeah.
Now, granted, most of them will still get their state, but that state is not a lot because it's not designed.
Remember, Ricardo, the Atlanta has a backlog of over 1,000 evictions right now that they couldn't file because of the stay. So those are getting chewed up right now.
And at a time, like I said, when your $600 is gone. So in Atlanta, I think the max is $365 a week. That is a drop in the bucket when you were getting almost $1,000 a week. Now, that's a whole other conversation we don't have time for today about why, people don't want the $600 to continue, why the Senate wants to cut it down. I can get both sides of it, but my point was you at least should have the decency before you left to go on break to at least extend it until you made a decision. Happy medium. You could have at least done that so that people would know, tomorrow not to have to worry about whatever's going on. Because it'd be different if the economy had bounced back. I wouldn't even say anything. It's gotten worse. So the fact that you didn't care enough, and you're not going to tell me otherwise, you didn't care enough to either extend it or at least stay your happy hide in sessions until you came up with some viable solution even if it was in the short term, to ensure that there was a bridge to get the American people over until you made the decision. But you didn't care. It wasn't you. It didn't affect you directly. You didn't care. You took a break, said we'll worry about it on Monday. Knowing you weren't even close to
they're
finding
all
a compromise.
employed. They all remain employed at $173,000 a year. So, but anyway.
So yeah.
So Michelle Obama.
My point. To my point with Michelle, when I read it, I could get there. Y'all know how I get. That made me really angry this weekend. I was so mad this weekend when they did that. I was like, so they've
been dragging their feet though, so I was not surprised. They've been really dragging their feet. Republicans have been saying, we don't want people to be, not working. We don't want people to accept not working as the new normal. And they've been really dragging because they didn't have to wait until the current package expired, to renew another one. They chose to. So I definitely think this is something voters will remember, and especially if it affects your situation. So I'm sure they will.
It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. But I digress. On the entertainment side, Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion just put out a song together called "Walk." Why do I know that? Only because of Facebook. I know how I am. That's the only reason I know that. Did I watch the video? Yes, I did. I'm not gonna lie. I did watch the video. I tend to like both of them. So I thought it would be cute to see what it sounds like. Of course, it's nasty as all get out. The video is really cute. Oh, also, Brandy's 7th album, 7 came out.
Did you hear the whole album?
I brought the whole album.
Did you hear it?
Did either one of you?
I did.
I haven't heard anything yet.
You got to hear it, Kyle.
Simone, what was your thoughts on it? I want to know what your thoughts on it were.
I'll just say that Brandy is still, the vocal Bible, and it's a well-deserved title. And she always will have a very special place in my heart. And I heard her say that she didn't want to listen to any other artists when she made this album because she didn't want to be influenced. That's all.
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
You sound like me. And me and my friends got into it about this weekend because I'm just going to put it on the table. As an avid Brandy fan, because she came out, she's my age. As an avid Brandy fan, I cannot say with a clear conscience that I love this album. I can't. I can't. The only reason, I'm going to be very honest and very frank, the only reason I brought this album, because I'd heard a couple of songs and I was not moved by any of them. The only reason I brought this album because the album was not expensive. And I had to invest in Brandy because I love her. I don't think it's cute that she's the vocal box, but I don't think people really understand what Brandy has done in her lifetime. Like from having Moesha to having a doll baby that looked like her, to being the first Black Cinderella. I don't think people really grasp what Brandy has done. So I'm an avid, diehard Brandy fan.
Yeah.
The issue with this album is, first of all, there's not a lot of singing. Brandy's a singer. So when I put it, and you go through my media player, you're going to find a lot of Brandy. I mean, from Have You Ever to Baby to I Want to Be Down, you're going to find a lot of Brandy because when you listen to a Brandy song, it doesn't matter what order, it doesn't matter which song, it fits every mood. There's something for every mood. I can't say that about this album. This album, I
think the entire thing had the same vibe. And there, for me, so every song really could have been like the next song or the last song. And I had to look and make sure the song changed because I didn't know if I was listening to one long song or not. But, I'm not really here personally for like the sing rapping or the sing talk rapping thing that like Ariana does or like, SZA. Like I'm just not much of a sing talk rapper. I mean, I am if you can't sing, right? Which I mean, some of these little girls can't sing. Ariana can, but Brandy can. She can sing, and so that's what I was like hoping for. And maybe that's the problem because Brandy is not. People change. A little bit. Beyonce's getting older. She's singing less and less. She's doing a lot more rapping. I've noticed. So I mean, maybe that's just going to happen. I mean, maybe that's just going to happen. I don't know.
I don't know much about Brandy's music other than the hits. Like you said, Have You Ever, I Want to Be Down.
Sitting up in my room.
I don't know any of that, but
Poison
I do know Brandy. I know that one. I do know Brandy is to be respected. I know Brandy is to be respected. And you guys were talking about the sing rapping, and you brought up how, Beyonce does it. And I had a friend that was like, she, missed when Beyonce was singing, but I'm like, at the same time, I don't know how old Brandy is. She's probably about mid-40s. Beyonce's pushing 40. They have to stay relevant, and so that's what sells now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're still able, but they have to sell a record at the end of the day, so they don't get axed from the label. That's just my input.
That's very true.
I mean, I get it. I get it. And I mean, I'm not, and like I told my friend, I'm not saying that Brandy's album is trash. I would never say that. It's a nice album. It's just one of those albums where even after listening to it almost 6 times, I still can't distinctly identify songs. Like, there's 3 that I have fallen in love with from repetitiously listening to it. Where in previous albums, you could pick any song and be good. With this one, it's hard to distinguish. Like Simone said, it's hard to distinguish where one ends and one begins. And there's very few songs on it that I just really wake up and like, I want to hear that song. But there are still Brandy songs that I wake up like, you know what, I want to hear Broken Hearted. I'm feeling Broken Hearted today. Or, I want to hear Sitting Up in My Room because I want to go back to that nostalgia. These songs mean something. I can't say that.
On the same tip, just because we're wrapping up with music, I feel like it is kind of cool seeing how these artists are unrolling music. And like, I really feel for them when it's like you've been gone for a while, you're coming back, and you're coming back during COVID. So like, whatever Brandy may have had in mind to promote this album, I'm sure she's not doing. I am so happy about what JoJo is doing. And I cannot get enough of what JoJo is doing and how she's dropping a video for damn near every song on her album. And I've been waiting for it for a long time. And I've been loving JoJo's voice since she was 13, 14, 12, or whatever, with her little lead Get Out. And now that she's a grown woman, like she can still blow down. And I love her whole album. So her whole album is what I thought I would get from maybe like Brandy's album, in the sense that like there was levels and there was layers and I could hear her voice, but it just had more colors to it. So anyway, I think she's a great example of a rollout, and she's been on, doing whatever virtual concerts she has to do. She's been doing like, a virtual concert a day. She stays on her live stream singing. Like, I think she's really promoting herself really well, considering this is probably not how she planned to come back. So maybe that's a piece of it too, is just that like, I don't even know where a lot of the promotion is coming from with what she's doing with this album. And, a visual album's a great idea nowadays. So maybe if she did a little bit more, I don't know.
Well, I did watch Black is King too, because everybody kept talking about it, which they were going to, because Beyonce. So I did watch it this weekend. I will say that it is visually stunning because, Beyonce's just that chick. And surprisingly, the music is actually really good. Like, she brought in African artists, which we're seeing a lot more of. And it was really, really good. And it actually put me to sleep. Like, I had to keep waking up because, and not in a bad way, in a good way, because the vibe was so good that it relaxed me to sleep, which I was not expecting. So I'm sure there'll be a soundtrack for it.
She kind of narrates it with that deep Southern drawl that she has, which I can understand. That can put you to sleep. For me, because Lion King is one of my favorite movies, it was exciting and interesting for me to see her tell the story the way that she did, with actual African people in a bunch of different countries all over the world. And it was cool. like Ricardo said, it was aesthetically pleasing. It was, the film itself is just really, really good. And I have a new genre of music that I wouldn't have listened to before watching the film. So,
True.
Yeah.
True. How do y'all feel about this movie? Oh, go ahead.
It was a gift I didn't know I wanted, because I was like, why she doing it? But when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is a gift I didn't know I wanted. Okay, cool. Good job, Beyonce.
How do y'all feel about this Mulan release? I'm curious. So Mulan 2 coming out.
I already have a subscription. I'm not paying again.
Kyle.
I'm not.
$30
it's not that important
though?
Well, it's a new
$30?
It's a new film.
But why can't you just put it on the streaming platform?
Well, they're not going to do that. Now, that I knew they were not going to do. But 30 bones? Even if you put it in the theaters, it was only $15 a ticket.
True.
Where did you get 30 from?
True. I don't know where they got 30 from. I don't. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like.
I wouldn't even pay that to see. Even if this was the case with a Lion King remake, I wouldn't even pay that for that. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I didn't see the trolls. And
I just gotta say,
trolls.
this movie looks dope. Like it looks so like this is the most I think a remake I've been one of the most excited for because a lot of these remakes I was like, like the Beauty and the Beast, I wasn't really tripping about seeing Beauty and the Beast, or like the Cinderella remake. I wasn't looking at that. It was cool, but like I was like, I'll wait. This looks like a damn movie.
Yeah,
Mulan has issues for me because it's still a Disney movie, so you don't get to remove elements from it. I don't care what you're trying to tell. I want Mushu, and I want other stuff. I don't care how you try. It's still a Disney movie. It's a remake, so you don't get to remove Mushu.
I felt that same way. I did. I felt that same way, but after reading and how the Asian community found Mushu to be offensive, I'm like, okay.
And they're trying to be more ethical, Ricardo.
Exactly.
Still a Disney movie. If they can complain to the council, the original has Mushu in it. You're not taking down the original of Disney Plus, so what difference does it make?
It's about going forward and doing better. Here's what I will say. I'm not upset, and I didn't. For me, I was more happy that because I thought it may have tainted it. The way that they did Aladdin and the way they had Will Smith looking with the genie effects, I thought it was so cheap. Like it cheapened the entire thing to me. It made him look. First of all, him just walking around being blue was just like okay. It was just strange. But when he did appear as the genie, it was like. It didn't look right. It didn't feel right. Like it did. And so, and you saw what happened with like cats. So basically my whole point, a lot of this technology and animation is just not aesthetically appealing. It almost makes it like more distracting. Like I can't get past how weird this looks. So I probably think, I don't even know what they would have done with Mushu and they may have really effed it up. So that's the only reason I was like, okay, I'll let that slide. Because, what?
They could have tried. My thing with Aladdin is because I've tried to watch the new real Aladdin 3 times, and I keep falling asleep on it or just disinterested. Primarily when they get to a whole new world. I'm sorry, me and my best friend Tanya sang a whole new world for our graduation for high school, for our graduation from North District. It means something to me. So I understand what they were going for, but no. Even if you voice over those actors with Peebo and Regina, I don't care. But that does it for me. I can't even get past that scene because I'm like, I'm waiting for, a whole new world with Regina and Peebo to kick in and to hear them try to sing it is god awful. So I can't even get past that scene. I'm sorry. And the fact that Will is blue, I'm sorry. I just can't get
Yeah. Robin Williams is hard to top. And see, for me, it was you ain't never had a friend like me. That was my song. And I just, my heart just, it ain't recovered yet. From what they did to the song, like they just didn't do it. They just should have skipped it. So yeah, my heart is still upset about that. I'm upset about the fact that I like my little Disney jokes. And Disney had some slick jokes in the original Aladdin. You know what I mean? Like when you met, they were true to the culture because these people live in Agrabah, which is this imaginary Middle Eastern Arabic place. And so when you meet the Sultan, he goes, "Oh, praise Allah," and and he's got his prayer mat or whatever. That's true to who they are. They'd be Muslim. I was there for that. I was there for them, talking about, what they were. So the fact that they've kind of censored it and made sure it wasn't culturally inappropriate, I think it kind of bled some of it out for me because I did want to, I wanted to hear my references for the Middle East. I wanted all that. That's kind of what I love Disney for. So I'm just hoping when they do Little Mermaid that they do the heck out of it. I'm glad that at least I know that she can sing, so that alleviates some of my concern. But yeah, that's going to be an important.
Shout out to Holly. What is it? Holly and what's her name?
Holly Bailey.
The girl.
Chloe and Halle.
Shout out to them because I've never been a fan of theirs. Not because I didn't like them. I just never thought they were for me. And when I saw the video for it, I was like, these girls really are like little mini Beyonce. They really have. I'm drinking their Kool-Aid right about now. So, I'm drinking their Kool-Aid. But on a final note with this in general, it's funny to me when you look at Disney Plus and you look at old Disney movies. Like when I look at Dumbo and you look at the Black Crows, I'm just like, y'all were really cool.
But that's what I'm saying.
Like,
but I wanted that in the new Dumbo. Like I expected that because it was part of the whole thing. I did.
Those crows were Jim Crows.
They were.
Those crows were Jim Crows.
They were.
Like the fact I just when you look at the old Disney stuff, you're just like, wow, you guys were subtly racist. Wow, that's something.
And like the Pocahontas with the tribal scenes with all the red man red type stuff, and you know, the Savages song. Like, how are they gonna redo Pocahontas? They're gonna just cut out Savages with the drumming, and they're just gonna cut out that whole song. Like, I don't know how they're gonna do it. Some of this stuff is inappropriate for, you know, it's inappropriate. You know.
Especially now, and these people are not tolerating it. So yeah, y'all better figure some stuff out, because yeah, you look at old Disney Plus, old stuff, they were undertones of racist. But I digress. All right, everybody. So you know, we've done some things. We talked about some things. If you didn't learn anything from today's broadcast, please pay attention to what is going on, especially those that live in Georgia. Please pay attention to what is going on and understand that you voting for president is not enough. You need to vote for your local officials, because they are the ones that directly affect your life on a day-to-day basis. So I need you to get involved. Nobody's telling you, you know, that you got to pull out 50,000 books. I don't care if you just tune in to us to get your weekly dose of it. Do what you got to do. But I need you to vote come November, because if you don't, what we've got now is only going to get worse, and it's not just about the president. It's about your representation. So any final thoughts from either one of you before we get out of here?
Go ahead, Kyle.
For me, it's just to wear your mask. And like I said before, if you have had COVID and you have beat it, then I think it's important that you donate plasma, because there's something that your immune system built and is in your blood that people who are currently fighting it can benefit from. So please do that.
Yeah, just make sure that you vote. Vote on Tuesday. It's a contested election, a lot of contested races. But these judges are the same people that are going to either give you a $200 ticket for your broken taillight or let you off. So they matter. So vote for who your judges are going to be. Vote for who your sheriffs are going to be. Vote for these officers, because, you know, all these officers are important for a reason.
All right, buddy, and there you have it. Oh, on a final note, on tomorrow, one of our advertisers, Dr. Ashley Dash, is having the first Black Men holiday. So you definitely want to register. It's free. It comes with all this free memorabilia, bags, shirts, all that good stuff. It's free. You definitely want to check that out. Register today, because it's actually tomorrow from 10 to 5. It's a Black Man Day. So you want to check it out. Go to blackmanday.com to register. Find out about all the great speakers. She took out the time to create a space for us Black men as a Black woman, because she loves Black men and wants to see them empowered. So definitely check that out. And we will see you probably next Friday, same time, same place on Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. White.